Rav Soloveitchik at the Rabbinical Council Convention, January 29, 1973, on the announced theme topic, Minuy Hadayanim,
which is recited the Tivo before Kriyas HaTorah, and the Bracha La'asot B'divrei Torah, which is said by the Yachid as part of his Birchas HaShachar. The Asher Bracha Banu refers to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, the quest to know, to formulate critically, to satisfy ourselves intellectually. It involves logical analysis, consistency, and a set methodology. On the words Vishinantam Levonecha, the Chazal add Shiur Mechudadim Beficha. They should be sharp and precise in its clarity of understanding. In addition to the intellectual enrichment, Asher Bracha Banu also involves the volitional, a promise not only to know, but to abide, to be obedient, to observe, to realize his moral kingdom on earth. We have thus not only Lilmo de Lalamed, but also Lishmo Velasos, the intellectual and the volitional. The La'asot B'divrei Torah, in sharp contrast, suggests a total emotional personality commitment, a longing for God's words as a precious treasure which promises bliss, ecstasy, and supreme happiness. Here we deal not with Shinantam, but with Asher Nochi Mitzadcha Hayam Alavavecha, with the emphasis Alavavecha. The Rabbeinu Tam tells us that the Ha'arevna is an extension of the bracha of La'asot B'divrei Torah. May the Torah be sweet in our mouths. Of course, we all concede, and proudly so, that the Rav has enriched us with Torah learning over the course of many years, the Vishinantam experience as only he can impart it. And besides our intellectual delight, we are also volitionally impelled to become more stringent in our observance and more meticulous in our behavior. What needs, however, to be mentioned is that he's also given us a geschmack, a v'harevna, an emotional feeling for La'asot B'divrei Torah. As Rabbonim charged with the responsibility of inspiring our congregations to Torah, it is the La'asot, even more than the Limud Torah, that is more vitally important. It is the love and the emotional receptivity to Torah which must precede the actual transmission of Torah. It is with this acknowledgement of our indebtedness to our Rebbe for both Vishinantam Levonecha and Alavavecha that I am privileged to present to this conference Moreinu v'Rabbeinu, Rabbi Joseph B.
What is the topic of the...
Minuy Hadayanim.
I didn't say it. Did I say it? No. No, I didn't say it.
That's what he said.
So let him say the shiur.
I expected that.
The Parsha deals with Minuy Hadayanim, that's correct. I'll just concern myself with one pasuk. Vayhi Mimacharas, Vayeshev Moshe Lishpeit Esom, Vayamei Dorom al Moshe min haboker ad ha'erev. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moshe said to judge the people, and the people stood by Moshe from the morning until the evening. There is a short remark in Ramban, there is a short remark in Mechilta. Rashi has elaborated the Mechilta. But you find them in this particular interpretation in the Mechilta as well as in the Ramban and in Rashi. By him Mimacharas Yom HaKippurim, or as Rashi expressed himself, B'mitzoy Yom HaKippurim, and the morrow of Yom Kippur. And Rashi proves, that this statement is correct, because according to Rashi, Yisro came the first year after Matan Torah, even though it's a machlekes atanoim, and between Shavuos and Mochos Yom HaKippurim, Moshe had no time, to receive Yisro, because he went up Mount Sinai and then came down, found the eagle, shattered the luches, came up again, and then went down again, and then climbed up the mount again for the last 40 days. So the only day on which Moshe could have received Yisro or sit down, Moshe could sit down and judge the people, was the day after Yom Kippur, Rashi. But however, the Mechilte, as well as the Ramban, don't try to prove, they just state, in a few words, as Mimacharas refers to Yom Kippur, Mimacharas Yom HaKippurim, and the more of Yom Kippur. Or, in other words, and the morrow of his return from Mount Sinai, because this was the first Yom Kippur in Jewish history, on which Slicha, Mechila, forgiveness and grace was granted to the people by the Almighty, and Moshe descended from the mountain on Yom Kippur. In other words, the Mimacharas is not related, according to Rashi and the Ramban and the Mechilte, to the event to which the Torah has recorded in the preceding chapter, namely the arrival of Yisro. As a matter of fact, the Ibn Ezra interprets the Mimacharas by relating it to the arrival of Yisro and the morrow of Yisro's arrival, but to another event, namely the descent of Moshe from Mount Sinai after having spent there 20 days, or on the morrow of Yom Kippur. Question is why? What pressed Chazal in the Mechilte, Rashi and Ramban to relate the story of Vayeshev Moshe Lishpet Esorom to Yom Kippur? In order to understand that, we will have to analyze semantically the term Mimacharas. The term Mimacharas, whenever it is used by the Torah, has an axiological component, an axiological element, or I would say contains a value judgment. By using the term Mimacharas, one attempts either to explain the worthiness and the dignity of today by attaching it to yesterday. Somehow the glory of today consists in the fact that today is very close to yesterday. The source of glory, the source of dignity is yesterday, not today. But today is somehow appended to Kedusha. As we have in Chazal, that Eisies Atfilis Lashem, Elekecho, the Chof, Elekecho, the Chof, Elekechem, Chof Shlosmem, are Kodesh, are endowed with Kedusha. Why? Because Nitpoles Lashem, they are appended or they are attached to the divine name. So whenever in many cases the Torah uses Mimacharas in order to tell us the story that today is dignified and worthy of great things because it is a nitpol Lashem. It is appended and attached to yesterday. And at certain times, the Torah employs the Mimacharas, the adverb of Mimacharas, that verbal time designation of Mimacharas, to denounce the yesterday, just in the opposite way, and to contrast between the shameful yesterday and the dignified today. I'll give you just two examples. Each example will characterize the semantics of Mimacharas. As I told you, the semantics is a twofold one. Let us take the verse in Kisiso, Vayim Mimacharas, Vayim Amesher Loom, Atem Chato Sem Chato Ogdelo, Vayishma Loom Es Adovar Hara Hazeh, Vayisaboro. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moshe said unto the people, ye have sinned a great sin. And when the people heard the evil tidings, they mourned. What is the semantics of the Mimacharas in context of the story of the Egel? The Mimacharas contrasts the Esmail, the yesterday, which was replete with noisy merrymaking, undisciplined hilarity, and complete addiction to pleasure, which was replete with wild dances and abominable orgies and complete self-abandonment. Vayokamom litzachik, and the people rose up to make merry. The Mimacharas denotes or has the connotation of the moral of a day, of the moral, which is a day of sobering up, of regaining perspective, of reappraising what happened a day before. And hence the moral, the Mimacharas, is a day of mourning, of repentance and contrition. The Mimacharas in this context signifies the miraculous metamorphosis from sin into tshuva. Yesterday was the Egel. Yesterday was a day of drunkenness, intoxication. Yesterday was a day of permissiveness and orgiastic pleasure. Yesterday was a day of idol worshipping and complete self-abandonment. Today is a day of mourning, a day of contrition, a day of tshuva. Yesterday is denounced, that today is affirmed. Today, what happened today? The rebirth of a people. What happened yesterday is simply the downfall of a people. Yesterday the people fell. Today the people rose. Yesterday is denounced. Today is affirmed. In similar vein, we may interpret another term which is I would say very close to Mimacharas. I mean the term Vayashkimu Baboker in the chapter dealing with the Meraglim, with the scouts. The phrase which the Torah employs in order to portray the change which came over the people in the course of one night is not Mimacharas, but Vayashkimu Baboker. However, it is very significant. The semantics are the same. Vayashkimu Baboker, Vayalu al Reish Or, Leimer Inenu, Inenu ve'olinu el amokim asher omer ad Hashem ki chotonu. And they rose up early in the morning and got up the top of the mountain, saying, Lo, we are here, and we will go up into the place which the Lord has promised. For we have sinned. Again, the night before was one of mortal fear and black, insane despair. They felt, the night before they felt, as if all avenues of escape were sealed off. Vayifkom balaylahu, and the people wept that night. But with the rising of the star of the morning star, the people began gradually to liberate themselves from the clutches of monstrous terror and resignation, and the new light, spiritual light, who went on, and many things they did not understand the night before became clear in the morning. They began to believe in the Almighty, in His promises. Vayeshkimu b'Baker is the story again of miraculous transformation, of a nightmare into a clear vision, a change of a cowardly mob in an enlightened people. It happens over one night. In Yehadus, downfall and rise are not separated by a long period of time. Downfall and rise succeed each other within a short period of time. In the course of one night, in the course of one day. And when the Torah speaks Mimacharas, it means yesterday. It was a day of sin and complete moral collapse. Today, or of the fall from the Almighty. Today is the day of rising back to greatness. However, as I told you, there is another meaning to Mimacharas, just the opposite. The yesterday is not denounced, on the contrary. Yesterday is singled out, and that today, in order to attain worthiness, dignity, Kedusha must append itself or attach itself to the yesterday. At times, the Mimacharas denotes not change, but on the contrary, just the opposite, changeless continuity. The yesterday, today is a continuation of the yesterday. Persistent identity. The Mimacharas signifies the lingering on of an experience. The Mimacharas ascertains the fact that an experience quite often is not extinguished with the passage of time. The term Mimacharas in this context is indicative, of course, of the Jew's longing for Kedusha, his clinging to Kedusha, and his refusal to let her go. While the Mimacharas within the context of the story of the Egel, and the Mimacharas within the context of the story of the scouts, denotes change. So the Mimacharas, in another context, I'll read a pasuk, signifies just the opposite, continuity. That today is nothing but a reflection of the yesterday. What pasuk do I have in mind? Huh? Correct. Usfartem lochem Mimacharas HaShabbos meyema v'hachem eseimer atnufo sheva Shabbos istigano ad Mimacharas HaShabbos HaShviz tisper u'chamishim yom. The day following the Shabbos, the festival, is not just an ordinary day. The day is not just another bleak, dreary, undistinguished day. By no means. The day is the marrow of the Sabbath, a continuation of the holiday. It is endowed with specific meaning. It radiates in iridescent light. It reflects the glory of yesterday, the beauty of the Sabbath. Many halachas in Yahadus express the idea of the ceaseless continuity of the Mimacharas. The most prominent one, that somehow a great experience does not die with the passage of time. That the awareness of Kedusha does not wither with the passing of the day which is responsible for that awareness. And somehow there is a tendency on the part of the Jew to extend that awareness. I would say ad infinitum. Of course, he is not successful in that. But extend it a little more. Beyond the boundaries within which the Jew found the source of Kedusha. And this is the halacha, of course. This is the precept of Teisve Shabbos in Yontif. Mesifim mechel ala kedesh. Of course, it's halacha, but halacha reflects an inner tendency in the Jew, a longing, a craving in the Jew for Kedusha, and his stubborn refusal to part with it. The Jew rushes into the Shabbos with impatience, but is very slow to part with her. The next day is not just a day, but Mimacharas, on the morrow. It is not endowed with intrinsic Kedusha, certainly not. However, it is appended to Kedusha. When I speak about that, Teisves Shabbos as reflecting the longing of the Jew for Kedusha, his despair in a profane, dreary, bleak, everyday world, and his joy with Kedusha, I remind myself of a scene which I once witnessed in Warsaw as a young boy, and I walked into a Chassidish shtibel. I believe there were Moshe Chassidim. I don't remember exactly. And they were singing at Shalashudis. It was quite late. In the Vesnagish Bot Medrashim, the Shabbos was already, they bade farewell to the Shabbos, and the stores were open. But in that Chassidish shtibel, they were still singing Bnei Chola. And I Hashem Re'ele Echsov and his Deshiyah Betzeni. And there was a little Jew there, very short in stature, little Jew. And he was wearing of course, a satin capote. There were more holes than what shall I say, than buttons or threads in that capote. And he was so enchanted and so mesmerized by singing at Shem Re'ele Echsov that I couldn't identify him, I didn't recognize him. Then he came over to me and said, "You know me?" I said, "No." "Oh, you see me every time." At the Iron Gate, it's a famous square in Warsaw, where all the coolies used to assemble. The porters. Yes. The porters. You saw me. I reminded myself of him, identified him. A little man who was very short in stature. And he used to carry in Warsaw, what shall I say, tables and heavy pieces of furniture. So the whole day, the whole week, he worked very hard, like a coolie, like a Chinese coolie. And Shabbos he turned into, as a Highness, into a prince. but he did not want to part with the role of a prince. He played just 24 hours every week. He refused to return to his abode of, his profane abode of bleakness and dreariness and nausea. And he tried to prolong the Shabbos as much as possible. But this is true not only of one individual, it is true of the Jewish people as such. And the halacha of Teis Shabbos Mesifim Mechel al HaKedesh, which Adim Reise, reflects, mirrors that longing in the Jew. Now, of course, in the light of the above said, when you begin to understand the term Mimacharas that Chazal have many times, here is not the only place, many times, whenever the Pasuk speaks Mimacharas, and we are in doubt to what the Mimacharas is related. So Chazal will always come in, Mimacharas Yom Kippurim. In the light of that, what we have just said, we understand the expression Mimacharas Yom Kippurim, which we come across quite frequently in Talmudic and Midrashic literature. A Jew does not just observe Yom Kippur. He experiences Yom Kippur as the great day of reconciliation on which God and men meet, as the day of God-man companionship, Lifnat Hashem Tedhoro. That's Yom Kippur, the experience. Not the day per se, the calendaric day, but the day as experienced by the Jew never terminates, never comes to a close. The glorious experience does not disappear immediately with the conclusion of the fast. It lives on and accompanies man into the profane, practical, and cynical world. The idea of Yom Kippur has a cathartic influence on the awareness of the Jew. It enriches his personality and synthesizes his heart. The experience of Yom Kippur and the philosophy of the day is not abundant with the conclusion of the day. It lingers on and accompanies the Jew throughout the Mimacharas. And the Mimacharas of Yom Kippurim, according to the concept of the Halacha and Haggadah, should not be limited to one day, but should extend throughout the year. And here we come across a novel idea, namely that the idea that mishpat, call it righteousness, call it justice, I don't care how you'll translate it, and the human role in the administration of mishpat is inseparable from the concept of Mimacharas Yom Kippurim. Vayeshev Moshe lishpet es om. Vayimimacharas. Vayeshev Moshe lishpet es om. Whenever Moses sat in judgment and acted like a justice, like a magistrate, like a dayan, like a shefet, it was for him the day who was for him Mimacharas Yom Kippurim. And let me explain it to you, I believe, by employing a halakhic concept. We know, whoever witnessed what you call a din Torah, or ever was raised in a rabbinic home, and I had the fortune or the misfortune to be raised in such a home, that most din Torahs, most controversies, most cases of litigation which came before the rabbi, before my father or my grandfather, ended ended not in a verdict based upon the strict law, but what we call and the Gemara called pesharah, either pesharah or bitzua. We'll see next what semantically the difference is between pesharah and bitzua. Pesharah or bitzua. As a matter of fact, my father told me that he was told by Reb Chaim, after all, he was rabbi in Brisk for 35 years, that he has never rendered a verdict based upon the strict letter of the law. All controversies, all kinds of litigation, ended in a verdict based on pesharah. Pesharah or bitzua, within the halakhic juridic context, is not just a way out of a difficult and long litigation, like sometimes a case which somehow a complicated case in court is finally, turned over to arbitration. It isn't so. But pesharah is the ideal legal solution of any civil controversy. The legal solution, the ideal legal solution, is not a verdict in terms of the strict law, but a verdict, a psak din, in terms of pesharah or bitzua. The authority of the dayan is not curtailed by the consent of both parties to resolve the matter by pesharah. And I purposely avoid the term arbitration, which corresponds to our institution of zablo, ze be'er le'echod ve'ze be'er le'echod, rather than to pesharah. The term arbitration and zablo, have very little in common with pesharah. After the parties agree to settle the dispute by pesharah, the dayan exercises his authority in the same manner and fashion as in a case of a strictly din Torah decision. The formal kinyan, I cannot go into halakhic details here. The formal kinyan, we've accepted the view that pesharah tzricha kinyan. As a matter of fact, the one-man domer in Sanhedrin is of the opinion that you don't need a kinyan in order to clinch the pesharah. You simply, if the baladinim accept it, is enough. Yeah. But we have accepted the viewpoint of the man domer of the Ameira pesharah tzricha kinyan. But I want to emphasize something. The kinyan sets up the bezdin as the legal authority, but there is no direct obligation on the part of the litigants to give or to renounce a certain amount of money. Tosafot already noticed that in case of direct assumption of indebtedness, the plaintiff, the teveya, would require no kinyan, since mechila is not subject to kinyan. On the other hand, as far as the nitva is concerned, kinyan would not suffice, since the amount is a dover shenekotzuf, he doesn't know how much he will have to give, and it falls under the category of asmachta. But the separate halacha of kinyan, which sets up the court. As a matter of fact, it's very hard to define precisely the role of kinyan as far as pesharah is concerned. What does the kinyan accomplish? Will always kinyan, if I tell you, if I promise you $100 and I accept the kinyan, it is a direct, I assume, an obligation of giving you $100, that amount. But in pesharah, I don't know yet whether how much the dayan will tell me to give and how much the dayan will tell the other party to renounce. I don't know. It's a dover shenekotzuf. It comes under the asmachta. And still, pesharah is indispensable as far as kinyan is indispensable as far as pesharah is concerned. So, in short, it is hard to define the role of pesharah. But once the role of Kinyan, in pesharah, as far as pesharah is concerned, but once the court is set up and the authority established by the Kinyan, then the dayan acts not just as an arbiter, as an arbitrator, no, as a dayan, as a shefet. The pesharah, for instance, the amount of money which the dayan, decides that the nitva should give to the teveya, for instance, or the amount of money which the nitva, the teveya, has to renounce, is the pesharah is not a product of just negotiating, but of judicial action, of the strictest, a strict legal procedure consisting of hearing and sifting evidence, of listening to arguments, of ascertaining true facts, and formulating the exact viewpoint of the law. It's interesting that in order to render a pesharah, the dayan has to know the exact viewpoint of the law, what the law is. As a matter of fact, we have a term for it, a technical term. Pesharah akreiva ledas, pesharah which is very close to the din Torah. However, every pesharah must be close to the din Torah. Because pesharah is not, as far as pesharah is concerned, the dayan does not have unlimited freedom to do or to say what he wants. He is obligated to follow, two authorities, namely, what two authorities? The mishpat, authority number one, and authority number two, his own conscience. I beg your pardon? Everything is determined by the dayanim, and all procedural, technical details are applicable to pesharah and din alike. For instance, all the halachas, certainly a dayan who has been authorized by the parties or by the litigants to deliver a pesharah verdict should not accept a bribe, certainly, you understand? Yeah. And all the procedural technical details, and there are many, in mishpat, apply to pesharah as they do apply to din. It's not just a free agreement reached by the parties with the help of an arbitrator. No, it is a verdict rendered by the dayan, by the shefet, in the same fashion as it is rendered when the baladinim request a din Torah. In a word, pesharah and din are two aspects of halakhic judicial action. You see, and here is the Jewish law. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a jurist, but I have a little common sense. A thing which sometimes lawyers and jurists don't have. Yeah. In here, in my opinion, is the Jewish law unique and singular. If there is a jurist, a great jurist here, I don't want a mediocre jurist, a great jurist here to contradict me, he is invited. And here, it comes to the uniqueness of Jewish law comes to the fore. In other law systems, the judge, of course, may recommend arbitration or conciliation, but by recommending arbitration or conciliation, he eliminates himself from participating in the final resolving of the case. The judge on the bench cannot make a compromise. He has to simply to render a decision based on law. If he recommends a compromise, then the case is turned over to some arbitrators or chosen. The role of the judge is to deliver a verdict which is based on the law. Yehadus considers pesharah as the function of the dayan, of the shefet, who renders a decision in the same manner, a pesharah decision, as he decides a problem of strict law. And by accepting a pesharah and by recommending a pesharah, we have accepted the viewpoint of Rabbi Joseph Ben that mitzvah lifts, that dayan should first, before he offers them, he should offer them the two alternatives. One, the entire, second, the pesharah. However, he should tell them that preference should be given to the pesharah. This is the finest and the most ideal solution. And he's not somehow, violating any law, or somehow placing his own conscience, above the law in mishpat. No, it is a part of his function. And the verdict of a pesharah is actually a roe, mishpat, din. Whatever applies, for instance, in Donim Balayla, would apply not only to the interior, but to pesharah as well. For instance, a judicially has no right to handle litigation, would apply to a verdict of din as well to a verdict of pesharah. That for instance, the dayan should be, impartial and not show any preference to either of the parties. Applies to din and pesharah as well. In a word, pesharah is din. But somehow it is din combined with the subjective feeling of the dayan, with the dictates of his conscience. The philosophy which underlies the institution of pesharah, and it's a very unique institution, is a twofold one. I would say one aspect of that philosophy is of an ethical, metaphysical nature. And the other aspect is of social, moral nature. The Gemara Sanhedrin, I believe it's Yudches, derives the whole idea of bitzua, of pesharah, from two verses. From the verse in Shmuel 2, in Samuel 2, 8, and from a verse in Zechariah. The verse in Shmuel says, Vayi David eisi mishpat u'tzedakah. The verse in Zechariah says, Emes u'mishpat shalom. Emes u'mishpat shalom. Shiftu b'sharechem. I quote this passage verbatim. Rabbi Joseph Ben mer mitzvah liftzea. Shenemar emes u'mishpat shalom. Shiftu b'sharechem. Bali b'mokim sheyesh mishpat ein shalom. ובמוקם שיש שולם אין משפט, אלא איזה משפט שיש בשולם, והאמר זהו ביצוע. וכן בדוד האמר, וידוד איזה משפט וצדקה, ולכל מוקם שיש משפט אין צדקה, וצדקה אין משפט, אלא איזה משפט שיש בצדקה, והאמר זה ביצוע. Is Rabbi Shua ben Korche, who is the father of the halacha. Because Rabbi Meir contradicted him. Rabbi Meir's opinion is that the dayan should not suggest to the parties, sure, but they should proceed along the lines of strict din Torah. Rabbi Shua ben Korche is the father of the institution of pesharah. So he explains pesharah by quoting, two psukim. Vayi David eisi mishpat u'tzedakah, und emes u'mishpat shalom shiftu b'sharechem. Why did he need two psukim, two quotations, in order to justify his opinion? Apparently there are two aspects which we pursue, which we introduce in order to justify the institution of pesharah. In other words, there is a great dichotomy, let us see, of justice and peace. B'mokim sheyesh mishpat and sholem, b'mokim sheyesh sholem and mishpat. And there is also an antinomy of justice and charity, mishpat and tzedakah. Apparently, Rabbi Joseph B thought that this dichotomy or antinomy, both dichotomies or antinomies, the one between justice and peace, and the one between justice and tzedakah and charity, can be reconciled in bitzua, in pesharah. In the din Torah, in the strict din Torah, there is mishpat, there is justice, but there is not charity. There is justice, but not peace. In bitzua, you find both, justice and peace, and justice and charity. Apparently, bitzua is the synthesis of justice and peace on the one hand, and justice and charity on the other hand. Let me tell you, vis-a-vis apparently the justitia civilis, means the sense of justice in Roman law, or in common law now, justitia civilis, Yehadus apparently knows of a different kind of justice, of a divine charitable justice, or justice of charity. It is two aspects which prima facie are mutually exclusive. Again, in contradistinction to the justitia civilis, Yehadus proclaimed not only mishpat tzedakah, but mishpat sholem as well. The justice somehow combined with peace. In short, there is apparently a double goal which pesharah pursues, and which din cannot achieve. What is it? Let me start with mishpat tzedakah. First, mishpat tzedakah. Din alone is justice. Pesharah entails both justice and charity, mishpat tzedakah. Let us explain it in very practical terms. In the halls of justitia civilis, or in the so-called secular courts, one of the parties involved in litigation gets hurt, at times badly hurt. Matters of litigation are being resolved in 99 of the cases which come before the bar of justice with victory of one and humiliating defeat of the other one. Justitia civilis has accepted the Aristotelian principle of contradiction, the famous logical principle of contradiction, in the same fashion as classical physics did. Aristotle, the principle of contradiction, says if there is A and B, and A and B are mutually exclusive, they are contradictory, then either A is right or B completely wrong, or the reverse is true. B is completely right and A is totally wrong. However, it is absurd to say A and B are both wrong or A and B are both right. Hence, therefore, justitia civilis knows that in every case of litigation, one of the litigants is right, while the other one is wrong. Hence, the right party wins, the wrong party loses. And both victory and loss are total, are complete. Yehadus, particularly the halakhic, which has never accepted the Aristotelian principle, never. The Aristotelian principle of contradiction, never. I can prove it by introducing 50 examples that the halakha did not acknowledge, did not affirm the principle of contradiction. There are many concepts in the halakha. We operate with concepts which are mutually exclusive and nevertheless both right. As a matter of fact, if you know, there's no need to know too much about it, but a little bit about modern physics, is the latter has also abandoned the Aristotelian principle of contradiction. For instance, the wave theory of light and the particle theory of light, you know, the famous controversy in physics, are mutually exclusive. But now you'll find physicists operating with both at the same time. And this is not a discovery on the part of modern physics, it's an old halakhic rule. שני כסויים מכחישים זה לזה, עד שיובי הכוס והשלישי ויכריע ביניהם, וימין ויכריע ביניהם, many a time that both are right. You wouldn't say that עד שיובי הכוס והשלישי ויכריע ביניהם means that one pasuk is right, the other one is wrong. Chas v'sholem, how can you say? If it's a pasuk in the Torah, it cannot be wrong. It's right. Is v'yachriya b'neim should be interpreted in terms of acceptance of both, even though they are contradictory and mutually right. Yehadus, in particular the halacha, which has never accepted the Aristotelian principle of contradiction, and which quite often recognizes both the thesis and the antithesis as true, or sometimes as wrong, looks upon civil conflict from a completely different viewpoint, not like the justitia civilis. A human being, Yehadu says, and this is not only, what shall I say, an ethical statement, it's a metaphysical statement. A human being cannot be completely right. Even the most righteous person cannot be completely right. Why cannot he be completely right? Because he is finite. His finiteness and limitedness spell imperfection, not only in the intellectual, but also in the ethico-moral realm as well. Man is never absolutely right. A finite being cannot achieve infinity in any realm. The conclusion from this metaphysical and theological premise that man can never be completely, totally right is obvious. If the human being cannot be unqualifiedly, unreservedly right, then the reverse is also true. That the human being can never be absolutely, ultimately, unreservedly wrong. The human being is both wrong, right and wrong. So the two parties, the two litigants, which appear before the dayan, before the shefet, are either both right or both wrong. Not, and the presupposition which is accepted by the common law and the Roman law, that the one is right and the one is wrong, is not acceptable to Yadus. Two human beings involved in litigation in a civil suit, both of them are wrong, and if you want, both of them are right. And the words of the Torah, "V'tzdikus atzadik v'shuyes rosho," should be interpreted in relative, not absolute terms. No man is an absolute tzaddik, no man is an absolute rosho. Therefore, Yehadus tried to protect both litigants against the disgrace and humiliation of total guilt and total defeat. Yehadus hated malicious joy and refused to let one of the litigants enjoy total victory and rejoice not so much in his winning the case as in the fact that his opponent was humiliated. Justice, charity, mishpat, tzedakah, requires that the resolving of a controversy, of a civil controversy, that a civil controversy should end not in complete victory or full defeat, but in the defeat of both. At the level of mishpat tzedakah, there is no victor, and there is no defeated party. Both win, and if it's both lose, both give something away. Batei and the nitva. Batei gives away a part of the amount he demands from the nitva. The nitva pays a part of the amount, which, according to his assertions and statements, he doesn't owe. Both are defeated. Or if you wish to substitute another phrase, I would say both win. The shefet is concerned with both and does not let the juridically entrenched and strong party to defeat the juridically weak party. This means, the way I interpret it, this is mishpat tzedakah. So what does it mean, mishpat sheyesh b'tzedakah now? What does it mean? There is no victor, no vanquished. Both are defeated, both are winners. This is a matter of interpretation. This is called bitzua, not pshore. What does bitzua mean? What are the Hebrew semantics of bitzua? Break, slice, give up, give away, lose. Don't be a winner. Don't be a victor in the total sense of the word. Bitzua, cut. Gzeru, as famous verdict by Shleimer. Gzeru, half a child to thee, half a child to the other litigant. It means no one should If Shleimus said Gzeiro, I want you to understand. If Shleimus said Gzeiro, of course it was a test, of course. But however, the Gzeiro itself contains truth. It means neither should win. Both should lose. Half a child. And this is exactly what Bitsua. Bitsua means Gzeiro. Cut in the middle. Give a slice to this one, a slice to the other one. There will be no victor. There will be no defeated party. There will be no joy on the part of the winner. There will be no humiliation on the part of the loser. This is mishpat tzedakah. This is charity. It is just. Of course, justitia civilis doesn't understand it. It's a typically Jewish concept. This is Bitsua. Now, let us pick up the second aspect of Pshore. Mishpat Shalom. Shiftu B'Shorechem. Again, we'll have to contrast the Jewish viewpoint with the viewpoint of the Justitia Civilis. Justitia Civilis is concerned with resolving a conflict, but not with reconciling the people involved in that conflict. This is not a part of Justitia Civilis. It is perhaps a task of a social worker, or a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, I don't know. But it's not the task of the judge. He resolves an issue, but he does not resolve a feud. He does not terminate a feud. This is perhaps the task of a rabbi, all right? As we pointed out above, the holes of Justitia Civilis, there is total victory as well as total defeat. As a result of that, hatred deepens after the issue had been resolved. Antagonisms increase in intensity. In the courtrooms of Justitia Civilis and in the halls of justice, feelings of enmity and vindictiveness are intensified. But the state, society, justice, this is the Justitia Civilis, does not care about its failure to restore friendship or to bring people closer to each other. It is beyond and above the purview of Justitia Civilis. Shalom is outside of its jurisdiction. In fact, it couldn't achieve this goal even if it wanted and attempted to do so. Because where there is total victory and total defeat, there cannot be peace. There cannot be reconciliation. Shehadus, by urging both parties to retreat, to abate their exaggerated or sometimes even justified claims, to retreat from their points of vantage, to give up and to give away, has changed the role of the dayan from magistrate into that of what? Of a teacher. He tells both parties, both litigants, that they are both wrong, that the claims of both are unjustified, absurd. The Shefet makes the litigants understand that neither of them was totally right or totally wrong. This is not just a verdict. This is not just judicial action. This is teaching. This is instruction. This is enlightenment. This is not just rendering a psak din, a verdict. He enlightens them. Of course, in consequence, he enlightens them. In consequence, it becomes clear to them that hostility and hate are out of place, and that the whole conflict was not worth the emotional excitement it caused. As a result of pesharah, peace and friendship are re-established. Emes u mishpat shalom shiftu bishorechem. Interesting is that the Mechilte in Shmos concerning the words Vedaiti ki yilem dover bo elai v'shafateti ben ishu ben re'yu. So Omar Rabbi Yeshua ben Kocho, or I don't remember the name, Zui Apshore. Shelachar sheniftorim, after they depart from the halls of justice, from the courtroom, are nisharim reim, they remain friends. What I said is no discovery by me. It was expressed many years ago by somebody. Who is it? Yeah? You should know that because it's quite a familiar text. There is a very enigmatic statement in Pirkei in the first period. Yehuda ben Tabayemer altas atzmocho ke'echei hadayanim וכשיהיו בלעדין עדים לפניך, יהיו בעיניך כרשועים, וכשנפטורים מלפניך, יהיו בעיניך כזכאים, כשקיבלו עליהם הדין. Let me translate it. And it is the true translation. I mean, you can check the so-called standard translation of Forest. They all erred in translating the word Eichei Hadayanim. What does Eichei Hadayanim mean? Do not act, or do not assume the role, or do not act like an all-knowing justice. Eichei Hadayanim means an all-knowing, omniscient justice, all-wise, all-knowing justice. Omniscient justice, who determines who is right and who is wrong with a sense of absolute certitude. The term Erer Din is a divine attribute. Of course. It's not what is, the term is used in modern Hebrew for a lawyer, an attorney, barrister. I mean, the Erer Din doesn't mean we involve God as the barrister or as the attorney. Lekeil Erer Din means to whom justice is clear, who knows the principles of justice. The way a person knows, is familiar with the food items on a table which is set. You know the expression, Shulchan Aruch, why is Shulchan Aruch? A set table, why is the code of law? Why is the code of law called the Shulchan Aruch? Why is it? Because Shulchan Aruch means if things are just, mixed up on the table, so you can't find anything. But if the table is set properly, I mean, you can find everything in its proper place. The knives and the forks and the spoons and the plates. And then when food is served, you know what to take and how to take, how much to take. This is, Lekel Eradin means God who is omniscient and knows all the aspects, all the ways of justice. Altas eid atzmecho, not ke'erchei hadayanim, but ke'erchei hadinim. Don't consider yourself. Don't look upon yourself with pride as if you were omniscient, all-knowing, all-wise. You are not omniscient. You are not wise. Hence, what don't you know? Who is right, who is wrong? Who is the Roshe, who is the Tzaddik? Who should win, who should lose? When the litigants are standing before thee, shiur baladin emdim lefanecho, look upon them as guilty. Both are wrong. When they depart from thy presence, look upon them as innocent, as soon as they have accepted the sentence. What does Yehuda ben Tabai preach here? First of all, humility on the part of the dayan is the first prerogative. Only God can mete out justice in absolute sense of the word. Man, the dayan, is a human being, limited, restricted by being finite. He cannot determine guilt and innocence. If he attempts to determine guilt or innocence, he is usurping the prerogative of God, who is the only Erer Din. In general, there is no sharp division within the human society. It is hard sometimes to single out the sinner, as it is almost impossible to single out the saint. The philosophy of pesharah recommends a paradoxical approach. First, that's Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai said. We said before, the pesharah rests upon the premise that both parties are wrong and both parties are right. The question is, how you operate with this premise? Because the premise itself contains an inner contradiction. So Yehuda ben Tabai said, before you render the decision, consider both parties as wrong, as guilty. And hence, if you consider both parties as guilty, so what will you do? You'll tell both to give up, to renounce, to give away, to abate their unjustified claims. Both must make amends and reduce their claims. After they had agreed to give up, pronounce both of them as right. This is the doctrine which is actually based on what? Which is nurtured by the idea of Yom Kippur. Based on the whole concept of forgiveness and atonement and absolution and vidui is based upon one premise. Namely, what is the premise? That man can never be totally right, so everybody is a sinner. However, if man can never be right and everybody is a sinner, by saying that, you lock the gates of tshuva. But the next minute we have to say, it's again a contradiction between two between two judgments. Both are true. The next minute say, since no man can be absolutely right, so no man can be absolutely wrong. He is not completely wicked. There is something good to him. There is a spark which has not been extinguished yet. There is something which, if stimulated, may cause him to rise, to greater heights than before. Mimacharas, it was on the morrow of Yom Kippur, Vayeshev Meishe, Lishpei Tesorom. Moses always remembered, while he was sitting in judgment, that mishpat, that to practice mishpat, and to act like a shepherd, one must be aware of the Yom Kippur outlook on guilt and innocence, crime and punishment, quarrel, enmity, and reconciliation. That a day of judgment, any day of judgment, must always fall on the morrow of Yom Kippur. And Moshe was taught to act like that by a great rabbi. On Yom Kippur, namely by whom? By the Almighty. He looks upon the world first. This is on Rosh Hashanah, basically. Here is where you see the distinction, Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. On Rosh Hashanah, if man appeals before the bar of infinite justice, who can actually win a case? He is wrong completely. Every man is wrong. There's not a single individual, not a single human being who is right. Wrong. But on the other hand, the next minute you say, yes, man is wrong. But however, he's not completely wrong. He's not totally wrong. There is something good in him. He's not totally wicked. There is something beautiful in him. All he needs is help and encouragement. And this help and encouragement came to Moshe on that famous Yom Kippur from God himself. And it is the task of Moshe, and not only Moshe, of all of his successors throughout Jewish history, to extend the helping hand to anyone, even though he might appear to be very wicked and very bad. This is the motto of the Shefet. This is the motto of the Chesed Mishpat. And this is the motto of Yom Kippur. Mimacharas, Vayeshev Meishe, Lishpei Tesorom. Only Mimacharas did Moshe judge the people. But there was not only one Mimacharas, there were many Mimacharas. Whenever Moshe sat in judgment, he thought of his encounter with the Almighty on that mysterious Yom Kippur, the first Yom Kippur, which Moshe has observed. Now, at this juncture, I thought I prepared a short shiur, I don't know. At this juncture, are you tired? We'll stop here. I'm through with the Mimacharas. The extension? Yeah. At this juncture, we arrive at a new conclusion that the usual traditional semantics of the verb shofet is wrong. The semantics of the verb terem shofet is wrong. Shofet. All right, you can pronounce it in Sephardic? Do it. I can't. I don't know. What? Shofet does not denote judicial action exclusively. What do you call judging? Our assumption that shofet or magistrate or dayan are identical terms is wrong. The semantics of shofet is all inclusive and point toward the totality of human relationships. And let me explain that shofet represents more than mere judging, and that it embraces the whole gamut of human relations. And I'll try to prove it to you. When we read the Psalms of Kabbalah Shabbos, we come across a very strange phenomenon. For instance, we read Yisro Hashamayim v'sogel haaretz, Yiram hayom umlei, Yal Yisodai v'chol hashabei, Oz yiranu kol atzi yuar, Lifnei Yad Hashem kivo lishpet haaretz, Yishpetevu b'tzedek v'am b'menosei. Let the heavens be glad, let the earth rejoice, let the sea roar, let the field exult, let the trees of the wood sing. Why? What's the reason? What is the occasion? Why should the whole nature somehow dance and sing and roar and be exalted? Because God came, is coming, the process of coming, to judge the world. If God is coming to judge the world, then fear and terror, as described in Musad Tekev, not joy, song, and ecstatic dance are in place. Strange. Im tematze imek hadin, mi yizekele fonecho badin. And you know how we meet HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashanah. It's fear and trembling. And here suddenly, David, the psalmist, says, no, dance and rejoice and shout and roar and sing, because God is coming to judge the world. The same in the next chapter. The same problem arises when we read in the following chapter. Shoma vatismach tzion vatogel lo bnei Yehuda leman mishpatecha ad Hashem yiram hayom umle tevel v'yesh vevo norei simcha uchov yachadorim yiranenu lifnei ad Hashem. What is the occasion? Kvol ishpet haaretz ishpetel b'tzedek v'am b'mishorim. When God judges creation, the Yom Adinu Achron, Umalochim Yechafezun, V'chilo Rodo Yechezun, V'yem Reneyem Adin Bo, Lishpet al Svamorim Badin, Ki mi yizekele fonecha badin. It's just the opposite of what David said. It's just reverse. When God judges, is ready to judge creation, who can say that he will be found not wanting? Only a madman can say that. In tematzei mekadin miyizeke lefanecha bari. The answer to this question is to be found in what? In the multiple semantics of the verb shofet. Kivo lishpeit haaretz means God is coming from the transcendental distances, from the mysterious beyond, to commune with this world, not to judge, to commune. He will come close to creation, closer to creation, establish contact, show his concern and interest, involve himself in the destiny of man in general, and in the destiny of his elected community in particular. Nearness of the shofet means nearness, to be near, to be involved, to be united, to communicate, to commune, to share, to give friendship, and to be together. Not to judge, not to examine man whether he's wanting or not wanting. If shofet means nearness of the Creator to his creation, if shofet means closeness of man to God, then shofet indeed inspires joy and rapture. What is more exalted and what is more sublime than to feel the touch of infinity upon the shoulder? Second proof, second argument. The Greek and Latin translations of the Sefer Shoftim, we have a Sefer Shoftim, called this book Judges, you know that very well. This translation is erroneous. And I'll prove it to you. Let us take a simple sentence and analyze it. Udveiro isho nevio, eishes lapidus, yishefto es Yisroel boeis hahi, vayalu bnei Yisroel aleo la mishpat. Now Deborah was a prophetess, the wife of Lapidot. She judged Israel. This is the way the standard translation was. She judged Israel at that time, and the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. If this narrow rendition, narrow and limited tradition of the word shofet be true, then the whole story makes no sense. All Deborah had to do, if all Deborah had to do is to resolve civil conflicts and render judicial decisions, then why did she act as a queen? Not just as a queen pro forma, but as a queen endowed with power. Nothing is being told us about our main preoccupation, namely judging the people. However, what was recorded about her life is her dedication to the people and her authority to determine the destiny of the people. She declared the war on Sisera. She chose the commander-in-chief to lead the Israelite troops against the legions of Sisera. She personally accompanied Barak to the field of battle. She, with Barak, pursued Sisera. She sang the great hymn of joy and praise. Does a magistrate do all those things? Does a judge declare war? Does a judge choose the commander-in-chief? Does a judge, pursue the enemies who have been defeated? Does a judge pray, sing a hymn of praise? Apparently she was more than a judge. She was preoccupied not only with administering justitia civilis, but with the destiny, with determining the destiny of the people. She was more than a justice. She was a queen, leader, teacher, and friend of the people. Yishefto es Yisroel beisahi should be translated, and she did guide and taught the children of Israel at that time. Not she judged. She guided, led, and taught the children of Israel at that time. Vayalu bnei Yisroel aleh la mishpat should be translated, and the children of Israel came up to her for guidance, counsel, advice, to be taught and trained and educated. The same is true of all Sheftim. Sheftim is not the book of the judges, but the book of the leaders, not of the judges. Vayishpeit Shmuel es Yisroel kol yimei chayov. Samuel just judged the people? Oh no. He led the people, he guided the people, he determined policy, he carried out policy, he shaped the people. The spiritual image of the people. He projected the spiritual image of the people. That he did all his life, but not just judging. Third proof. You still remember the first? Let us ask a simple question about the Parshas we read last Shabbos. The Jews were in the desert, true? They were provided with food, clothes, and all other necessaries. Correct? There was no need to win the daily bread in the sweat of the countenance. There was no need in the middle. Well, you know the story. Vayachilcha Samon, Simloscha levolso melecho, veradlcho levatzeko. He fed thee the manna, thy raiment waxed not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell. There was no commerce. There was no industry or manufacture of goods. There was no competition. There was no grabbing and seizing and stealing and robbing. There was no place for commercial feuds, for economic conflicts. If somebody tried to hoard the manna for the next day, he was punished at once. The manna bred worms and rotted. If one attempted to grab more than the ratio allotted to him, by the time he came home from picking the manna, the additional measure which is told disappeared. In short, cheating, grabbing, stealing were impossibilities. Now a question arises. Why were there so many litigants standing up near Moses that Moshe had to spend the whole day, from the morning until the evening, sitting in judgment? What did he judge? What did he quarrel about? Rebbeinu Shalom, what was there? The whole sentence Vayeshev Meishe Lishpo et Esorom is mystifying. It's puzzling. However, the puzzle is cleared up with the change of the semantics of Shofik. If Shofik denotes the total spectrum, if Shofik means related to the total spectrum of human relations, beginning with leadership, but concluding with love, concern, and unqualified friendship, then we understand what Moses used to do the whole day. Of course, there was not much need for judicial action, for civil justice. However, there was a great and awesome need for leadership, for teaching, and particularly for giving friendship to the people. There were perhaps not many civil controversies. Requiring Moshe's attention, but there was a myriad of human problems, of human tragedies, which confronted Moshe. Don't forget, people who were in slavery. I just read, I don't remember where, in the Times, another paper, that the psychiatric problems of the prisoners of war who will return soon to the United States are staggering. So imagine the problems which the Jews confronted when 600,000 Jews, male population, who went out of Egypt. There were not people who were in slavery hundreds of years, ridiculed, humiliated, tortured, their wives dishonored, their children snatched from the motherly arms and brutally murdered. Suddenly they were liberated. Suddenly they found themselves free, independent. And the eyes of the world were focused on them. Many slaves, former slaves, did not know how to live a free life. Nightmares pursue them. Memories frightened them. Each knock in the door at night reminded them of blood-chilling scenes. The people were completely dislocated, confused, frightened. They needed somebody to lead, to teach. And particularly somebody in whom they could confide. They clung to Moshe. Never mind Justitia Civilis. They wanted to be in his company. His mere presence was inspiring. His voice was assuring and calming. His words of wisdom enlightened them. His words of comfort and solace placated their pent-up, perplexed emotions, healed their seasons, and infused them with hope and trust. Vayeshev Moshe lishpot es ha'om, vayamod ha'om al Moshe min ha'beker ad ha'erev. Why did the people stand about Moses from the morning until the evening? Certainly not in any official capacity, not because Moshe assumed the role of the ruler and chief justice, and he required of the people that they stand in his presence. As they do it, when the judge walks into the courtroom, they say, but what is the announcement by the clerk of the court? I don't remember. Rise. There was no clerk who announced rise when Moshe came in. Certainly that not because Moshe required of the people that they stand in his presence. They stood about him because they loved him. They were fascinated by him because they could not be separated from him. The standing was not of a ceremonial nature at all. It was spontaneous, natural, I would say instinctual. They simply couldn't leave him. In Moshe's presence, they felt differently. They forgot the Nixim and the Shetrim and the crying of the children who were snatched away from the mothers. They forgot all the humiliation, all the oppression, all the evil which was inflicted on them in Moshe's presence. It had a cathartic effect upon them. Yisro misunderstood all that. He could not imagine a justice teacher. He could not understand a justice friend. He could not understand Moshe, who was at the same time teacher, leader, friend, and judge, to whom the people clung, and whom they didn't want to leave alone. He thought that Moshe plays the role of a stern ruler, mighty king in whose presence no one is allowed to sit. Yethro thought that the people stand because they were instructed to do so, because the protocol demands it. That's why he rebuked Moses. The Mechilta and Rashi says that he reprimanded him for sitting while the people stand. And he said, Vayar chesen Moshe eskol asher hu eis Elohim madua ato yeshiv levadecho v'cholom nitzav lecho min beker ad erev. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, as if he were a gentle ruler, he said, what is the thing that thou doest to the people? Or why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand near thee from morning until evening? Rashi remarks, in the name of the Mechilta, he was sitting like a king. Yisro saw him sitting like a king. In Yisro's imagination, Moses sat like a king. Really, he did not sit like a king. And they all stood, and the thing was distasteful to Yisro, in that he made light of the respect due to Israel. Therefore, he reprimanded him. Yeshiv kemelech v'chol ha'om emdim v'hu k'she'adov liYisro she'emizalzel Moshe u'emizalzel b'chvedom shel Yisrael. He was disrespectful to the people whom he saved and he redeemed and he took out of Egypt. The standing, you know very well that Yisro was wrong from A to Z. The standing was not ordered, but spontaneous. Simply, there was no sitting room. The people stood in order to be close to their great teacher and friend, in order to be able to touch him, at least to touch the corner of his garment. Not kimelech, but like a friend. Interesting is that while the Bible uses the term emdim of a holom emed al meishemi beker ad erev to describe the scene which Yisro misunderstood, another term was employed by Yisro in his rebuke addressed to Moses, namely nitzavim v'cholom nitzav v'lecho mi beker ad erev. When the Torah describes the facts, the situation, the Torah uses the term emed. V'yamedon al Moshe mebeker ad erev. When Yisro rebuked Moshe, he employed the term nitzav. What's the difference between emed and nitzav semantically? Of course, there are two synonyms to shemes anadofim, but there is a difference, a distinction. The difference between emed and nitzav is obvious. The verb emed describes just a physical posture, in contradistinction to another physical posture, namely yeshiva. Vayeshev Moshe lishpot at home, his physical posture was that of yeshiva, while the whole emed, all of the people crowded about him, around him, and they stood around him. The term, the verb nitzovim, has another connotation. Nitzovim refers to standing not as a physical posture, but as a sign of subordination, of preparedness to serve, to implement the orders, of being ready. If you are ready, you stand straight, at attention. Vayikro v'leyochal Yosef li'isapek, l'cheil hanitzovim olav. Vayikro Yosef b'kol, hitzio kolish me'oloi. The term nitzovim is concerned not with the physical posture, but with the fact that Joseph was master, and the others who were present, who were his subordinates. That's why he ordered them to leave the house. That was the mistake on Yisro's part. He thought the people are nitzovim. It is protocol. Moshe, the mighty ruler, who wants his servants to stand at attention. They were ordered to do so. They were instructed to do so. So Yisro felt it was wrong on Moshe's part. He rebuked him. But all this took place in Yisro's imagination. All this was not a reality. Moshe never instructed anybody. The people did refuse to leave Moshe. They didn't want to depart. They wanted to come as close as possible. Somehow his presence had a redemptive, cathartic, therapeutic influence over them. His presence, his voice, his personality healed the schisms and placated their minds. As a matter of fact, Moses answered Yisro and explained to him what the Jew understand about Shafet, not justice, not judge, but to be together, to help, to give friendship, to give love, to be concerned, to be involved, and so forth and so on. Moses answered Yisro and explained to him his role. Both Rashi and Nachmanides and the Ramban agree that Moshe told Yisro about the threefold task he performs within the community, and that what we call shofet is not restricted to judging, but extends to the whole complex of human relations. Moses broke down his relationship with the people into three component parts, according to Rashi and the Ramban. First, ki yovei elayom lidreishes olikim, because the people come to me to inquire of God. Second, ki yelem dovor bo elai v'shafadeti ben ish ubein re'eu. Second, when they have a matter, they come to me and I judge between one and another. Third, v'daiti lohem es huki alekim v'esteresov. I do make them know the statutes of God and his doctrines. The Ramban holds the view that the sentence ki yovei elai lidresh alekim refers to prayer. The people in time of distress, please, and crisis, come to me with the request that I should intercede with the Almighty on their behalf. This is the job of whom? To pray is the job of whom? Of a friend, of one who shares in the travail and the distress and the agony and the misery of the sick person, or of the person who is confronted with crisis, or of the person who was struck suddenly, unexpectedly, by disaster. Only a friend can pray. A stranger who is indifferent to the suffering of fellow man has no right to pray. Chazal express themselves beautifully. V'tzor sheyech le'olav. He should share in this sickness, in the illness. Moshe said, Yisro, you just told me I sit like a king, and the protocol requires that they stand in my presence. It is just, it's your imagination, has fabricated such a story. First they look upon me as a friend, as an equal of theirs. They know I'm close to God. They come to me with their trouble, and they confide in me, and ask me to pray to God, and to help them. Secondly, you are right. I'm also a judge, but there's not much to do about it, being a judge here. It happens sometimes, the heavy matter means controversy, problem of litigation, boilai. Of course, veshafadati. But when I judge the people, is not the way I used to observe you judging your Midianites. In the court in Midian, one is wrong, the other one is right. One is wicked, the other one is righteous. In the court in Midian, one used to be hurt, badly hurt. The other one used to rejoice in the downfall of his opponent. In my court, veshafatati, bein ish ubein reu. When they leave, the Bechilta says, Kesheniftorim miolai, when they bid goodbye, farewell to me, Niftorim kereim, they walk out of my court, of the halls of divine justice, not justitia civilis, as friends. And finally, Vedaite es chukei elikim v'esteresov. Moshe was the great teacher par excellence, who instructed the Bnei Yisrael in the divine law and doctrines. Moshe, in other words, who was friend, who shared in the travail and joys of the people. He was leader who administered not ruthless justitia civilis, but divine righteousness tempered with love and grace. Mishpat tzedakah, mishpat sholem. Ben ish uben reu ze adin sheyesh bepesharah. I'm now reading the text. Sheshneim niftorim ze im ze. Kereim. Moshe hinted to Yisro that he prefers a verdict based on compromise rather than based on strict laws. For in a case of a pesharah decision, the parties friends, and finally Moshe told him that he is the teacher, and Moshe indeed was the great teacher and educator par excellence, who taught not only his generation, but he is still teaching Jews throughout the generations. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. This means lishpetetom, to be a friend, to promote charity, caritas justitia, mishpat tzedakah, to further peace and friendship between among the people, and to be the teacher who shaped the elected community into a great nation, into Am HaNivcha. Now let me just close with the following thought. Vayamei do'om al Moshe min Beker ad Erev. There is a strange Mechilta, a strange and incomprehensible Gemara in Sanhedrin, and of course Rashi quotes the Mechilta and the Gemara, and the ipsa facto, Rashi is strange and enigmatic. Efshar leimar kein. Is it really possible to say that Moses said the whole day long? Rashi, in all naivete, raise the question. Elo, kol dayan shedon dinemes lamitei. Any judge who gives a rightful decision as truth demands it, afilu shoachas, even though he spent but 1 hour on it, malo lavakasuf kilu esik batei kolayim. So the scripture accounts it to him as though he had occupied himself with the study of Torah the whole day long. One answer. There's another answer. וכאילו נעשה שותף לקדוש ברוך הוא במעשה בראשית שנאמר ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד. And as though he became co-partner with the Almighty in the work of creation, of which it is stated in Genesis, it was evening, it was morning, one day, and perhaps a unique day. Interesting is that Mimacharas says, "Vayerev vayveker yom echad ze Yom Kippur." And the Mimacharas, not Mimacharas. It was evening, and it was morning, one day. This is Yom Kippur. Why? Because apparently echad is interpreted by the Midrash as being unique, singular, not just one day. The one day. Rashi quotes the Mechilta. However, in our text, the Mechilta, the first answer, the dayan spent an hour in administering justice, true justice, in the scripture accounts to him as if he had studied the Torah the whole day long. I mean, that we don't find in the Mechilta. Nor do we find it in the Gemara Sanhedrin. However, what Rashi quotes both, probably his text heavy. What Rashi is trying to put across, the message which Rashi is trying to put across, is a twofold one. First, the judging, as we said before, and teaching are identical acts. He says, a dayan who spends 1 hour on administering justice. So, the scripture, Kosov, accounts to him as if he had studied the law the whole day. It means studying the law and meting out justice are identical acts. Moreover, because the way I explained it, to judge means to teach. To judge means to educate. To judge means to enlighten. Otherwise, the whole institution of pesharah would crumble and collapse. Yeah. Moreover, the impact of instruction through handling a case properly and through delivering a true and fair verdict is by far greater than theoretical teaching. Of course, as I would subscribe to it. Of course, teaching by deed, by example, is always more impressive and more effectual than teaching by the word. That is exactly what Rashi had in mind. An hour of true, honest judging is as productive and significant as a full day's study just by mouth. Very simple. However, apparently Rashi was not too happy with that yet. Rashi wants us to understand this equation of judging and teaching. It's an equation, and I explained before. To judge means to enlighten. To judge means to teach. To judge means to instruct. But however, there is one question that should be asked. To teach what? To instruct in what? To enlighten how? What do the litigants learn if they appear before Moshe? And Moshe tells them to obey their claims and to ask for a verdict based on mishpat tzedakah or mishpat shalem. What do they learn? What outlook on life do they learn from Moses by appearing before him? And Rashi answers, not Rashi's Meshute. What they learn is the idea of Baker and Erev. It's a very mysterious answer. What does it mean? You wouldn't guess it. So that's why it's futile to try. The Ibn Ezra, as well as the Ramban and Kimchi, I quote all of them because this is a very important problem and of semantics, explained in Bereshis Bo that the term Erev is derived from Orev, Arev, to mix or to confuse. Taruvis, Rabbonim know what Taruvis is, here is Taruvis. And Baker is derived from Bakeir, Le'yevakir ben Teiv Loro, discriminate, distinguish. I'll read. Erev writes Ibn Ezra, Korev mitam cheshech, is close to the word of cheshech. V'nikro kach is called Erev because it's dark. Shenisarvu atzuris bei, images are mixed up, intermingled. You cannot distinguish between Reuben and Shimon. It's very interesting and would support the opinion of Ezra. It's a philological opinion, it's a question of semantics, that the time of mourning for reading Shema, Mishiyaker es Chaveri HaKorev Elav Daled Ames. The very moment you can identify a face, a countenance, it's morning. What does evening mean? The impossibility to identify even a close friend of yours. The Ramban writes, V'yikro tchilas halaylo arv erev be'avu sheyisarvu be'atzures. And the beginning of the night is called erev because the tzures are confused, the images are confused. Utchilas hayem beker sheyevaker odem b'neisam, a man can discriminate, distinguish between one identity and another identity. And he mentions Kipirush Reb Avram, the way Reb Avram explained. Kimchi expresses himself in identical fashion, but a little more is more elaborate. Ois achar bi'is Hashemes, the time which follows sunset, Nikro Erev is called Erev, Loshen Irbuv. There is confusion, perplexity. V'yischabrus advorim, things merge into one mass. I can tell you now I have very poor eyesight, and I'm driven, I don't drive. At night I get frightened because I don't see the road, I don't see the streets, I get the glare of lights, and everything merges into one dark mass. Yes. Mipnei shueis hacheshech, it's the time of darkness. V'yisarvu advarim, things are intermingled. Shleyakir odom, men cannot identify. V'leyafrid bin dover ledover, he cannot discriminate between two identities, between A and B. Baker, he writes, Kimchi was a great authority, and he gave authority on semantics and grammar, a great grammarian. Baker tchilas hayem, Yikore Baker, Loshen Drishe, research, understanding, ubikeres, criticism, discrimination, distinction. Kiba Baker in the morning, Yizbaker Koldova. Everything is identified. Leir hayem, in the light of the day. There are apparently two streaks in being. I say being as a whole, that of rationality and that of mystery. Reality, call it nature, I don't care, is both intelligible. Reality is very intelligible. Creation is intelligible and at the same time constitutes a mysterium magnum, never to be unraveled. The simplicity of the mathematical equation, which answers the question of how the universe functions, and the philosophical and metaphysical insoluble mystery as regards the question of why the universe functions or what is the universe, are characteristic of being as such. Aristotle denied the possibility that two contradictory statements, two mutually exclusive tenets, can coexist. They do exist in nature itself. That's his great mistake. Nature on one hand is intelligible. On the other hand, it's a closed book. At times, nature is very cooperative, smilingly opening up to us her recesses, allowing us to climb to the stars, and in motherly fashion reveals to us her secrets, and at the same time, nature is tough, refuses to recognize our presence, is closed up, defying man's aspirations, letting him confront the mysterium magnum in fear and in trembling. Sometimes nature is very, very stubborn, and sometimes nature is very cooperative. As a matter of fact, I said it many times, as far as mechanical sciences are concerned, the mathematical exact science are concerned, which deals with inorganic matter, dead matter, still matter, nature is very gracious, was very gracious to man. Because physical sciences have reached, great heights, unimagined heights. The fact that we have climbed to the moon, affirms it. You see, but organic nature, the cell, as a normal and also as abnormal. Matter is close to us for the time being. We have achieved very little in biology and physiology, very little in biochemistry. All right, we made great progress lately, but to compare what we know about behavior of inorganic matter, about electricity and magnetism and motion and hydrodynamics, dynamics and so forth on, with what we know about biology, about the cell, about life, about the biochemical behavior of organic matter, it would be a folly. We know almost nothing. Everything is played up, everything is printed in Times on the front page, but we know nothing. And the best proof is, I said it many times, that the man who can climb to the moon cannot defy a malignant cell in the organism. Malignant cell in the organism, nature cannot heal, cannot restore normality. It can, the surgeon cuts out, yes, but this is not healing. It's just cutting out, crippling, mutilating. To heal, there's a long road to travel. And who knows whether we'll ever know that. Nature is sometimes very cooperative like a mother, and sometimes very cruel, letting men confront the mysterium magnum in fear and trembling. Being, as such, contains both Erev, the way the Ibn Ezra, the way Kimchi, the way the Ramban explained, confusion, and Baker, clarity. A mix-up, Taruves Atzuris, as well as distinctiveness, Bikeres, discrimination. Progress, which defies the imagination, and humiliating stagnation and immobility on the part of man in quest for the truth. And this dual streak in reality is applicable not only to the scientific gesture, to the cognitive scientific gesture, but to the private human existential experience as well. The human day, the human existence in time is not a uniform one. It is split into parts, in two dimensions. One is called Baker, the other one is called Erev. Vayi Erev, Vayi Baker. Yom Echad. This is the day of man, the human day. How long this day is, doesn't matter. Sometimes it's 50, 60, 70 years. And sometimes it reaches 90. Very seldom what it happens. But it's just a day. Kelef shonim beinecha ki yemes mil ki yareh. Ve'ashmur avaloila. Man lives a day. Ki b'yem achol chomemenu meis tomos. Means you'll die. Doesn't mean today. It means at the end of your day. How long it will last? A different story. But you'll die. And the day of man, the Yom Echad of man, it consists of Erev and Baker. It consists of understanding and discriminating. When the existential awareness is a rational one. The ontological experience is saturated with joy and happiness. It is Baker. We live, we exist, and it seems to us that we also at times during the Baker period. And it seems to us that we also comprehend the meaning of our living and existing in time. That somehow we fulfill ourselves during that day. We sometimes have the feeling. I have lost it long ago. But you, perhaps you are younger than I am. Perhaps you still have it. It's a blessed feeling. It is the Baker. We are cognizant at that period. We are cognizant of our continuous growth, of our continuous progress, intellectual as well as emotional, with the passage of time. What we did not know yesterday, this is the optimistic approach of the scientists. What we did not know yesterday, yesteryear, or yesterday, we know today. It is true. And what appears to us puzzling and enigmatic today, now will be clear and simple the next day, a little later. We feel that we move with time toward greater goals and more enchanting and fascinating horizons. Some people feel it. As a matter of fact, some Israelis, not all of them, many fake, but some Israelis have this feeling. They live in the period of Baker. Somewhere there is meaning, there is, what shall I say, there is a goal, and next year will be better than this year, And 2 years from now will be much better. This is a period, this is, I would say, existentially a justified experience. If not for that experience, man would still be in the cave or in the jungle. The boldness of man, his quest, his drive forward, his courage to climb, to the stars, to at least reach out for the stars, is a result of Vayiveka, of that sound, sane, and courageous feeling that God told me, rule the land, rule the universe, and conquer it. And as I said, this feeling, this existential experience has been sanctioned by God. Not only sanctioned, but man was encouraged by God. Perhaps it is mandatory on the part of man to do so. We have never preached quietism the way Christian mystics did. Never quietism. We are active. We are bold. We are moving. And so forth. Time, from that viewpoint, from that point of vantage, means enlightenment, progress. Baker equals baker, knowing, discriminating, progressing. The morning is bright and so beautiful, and during the Baker period, man is victor. He is proud and strong. However, there is another part to the existential day of man. The day of man consists of Baker and earth. When the existential awareness turns into existential confusion and non-understanding, when the ontological consciousness mocks at itself, when man begins to mock at itself, when he begins to ridicule himself, the man becomes a masochist, tortures himself, denies himself, and downgrades himself. When the ontological consciousness mocks at and denies itself, contradictions show up in the period of the Erev, problems appear, or wherever a while ago harmony prevailed. What was united before lies now in debris. Everything seems topsy-turvy, upside down. There is no integrity. Living means just to pick up debris, fragments of a being which was and isn't anymore. Debris of a shattered existence. Events happen seemingly or without, seemingly because according to our finite mind, or without any rationale. The whole act of living becomes, if I may use the existential term, a very ugly affair. You ask why and what, and you find no answer. This kind of an existence, which was before, a while ago, so beautifully defined, this kind of an existence was beautifully defined by the Pirkei Avos. It's very strange. We have never noticed it, how beautifully, I believe, no existentialist since Augustine, Pascal, and the mother have ever expressed the paradox of living in such a wonderful way as our Tana in Pirkei is. I don't remember who the Tana is. What did he say? Existence in the period of Erev is an unwanted, compulsory living from which man paradoxically is liberated by an unwanted, compulsory death. Exactly. But if you say it in Hebrew, I mean, you don't pay attention to it. But I to translate it in existential terms. Bal koch hatochai. The existence is unwanted. Living is a compulsory performance. I do it under coercion. So I should expect that. I should welcome that. Oh no. From this experience you'll be liberated. But by what? By death, which is both unwanted and compulsory. Yahadus taught man to accept both the Erev and the Baker dimensions of our existential experience, to be bold in the morning and humble in the evening, to be grateful for the morning and to be faithful when everything is orderly and neatly arranged, and to be faithful at the evening when everything is in utter confusion and disorder. Lehagid babeker chasdecho vemenoscho baleres. Man is victor, conqueror in the morning. In the morning he is critic, expert, scientist, ruler. He likes this role, of course. However, he should also learn to like the role in reverse. When man is defeated by nature, then he is neither critic, since he cannot discriminate, nor is he ruler, nor is he expert, since he is perplexed, nor is he ruler, because he is the weakest living being in the universe. Man who was defeated is the motto of Erev, and this cry must be heard by man. The dayan who renders the true decision, the pesharah decision, what is mishpat tzedakah or mishpat sholem, teaches the litigants who are seeking victory, the baker, how to give up and how to give away and how to accept defeat and be satisfied with it. Lagid babeker chasdecho.